Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? You can hear what I'm saying. Can you signify in the chat? Okay, no, I'm feeling like no one is hearing me. Hello, if anyone can hear me, can you please
Join the
signify?
bell. Oh,
Hmm. Okay, yeah, thank you for signifying. Um, yeah, apologies for the slight delay. I would, we're just about 12 on the call, right? I would suggest that we still give, the rest some minutes to join in so that we can have more people on the call. So let's just hold on till 12:10. I think that works 12:10, and then we'll just kick off then. Awesome. So once again, hi everyone. We are going to we're going to kick off now. Welcome to this session on UX case studies. I I wanted to ask, hope you guys enjoyed your class on prototyping and interaction a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I hope you did. Prototyping is an important part of design, and it's actually also quite interesting. But yeah, um, so I'm gonna try as much as possible to not make this class long, because what happens with UX case studies is that if you're not careful, there's so much to talk about that you might just keep talking and talking and talking. And we've already uploaded the video to an introduction to UX case studies. It should be in your elements by now. So if you've not been opportunity to see that, you probably should also check it out after now, or you probably might not need to, but yeah, it's there. Okay, without further ado, I'm just going to share my screen right now. I'm going to get started with what we're having to discuss about today. And as usual, if you have any questions or comments, please you can hold on to them or drop them in the chat, and then we can attend to them when I'm back here, because when I'm sharing my screen, I cannot see the chat. All right, so let me share my screen really quickly, and then we can get started. All right. If you guys can see my screen, can you like indicate with a thumbs up or drop a message in the chat so I know that everyone is following? Maybe let's do a chat. I'm not sure I can see the thumbs up. Just one or two people should just let me know that they can see my screen so I can proceed.
Yeah, I can see your screen, sir.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Um, Great, great. Now, UX case studies. I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have heard one or two things about UX case studies in the past. Probably some scary things, probably some interesting things. Today we're going to debunk all the bits that you've heard. So, let's just get started, right? As you all should know by now, I like starting every session with a quote that relates to what we're saying. And today we're going to be taking one from Dorinda Mamo. She is a designer and a creative director. And what she says is that every great design begins with an even better story. There's one thing that I tell you know, designers that I talk to, or generally, like anybody that asks me a question that would like to listen for a response. It's that design is obviously, and from the discussion in the initial classes, you also should have heard this. Design is much more than pushing pixels. Design is way much more than pushing pixels. Design is problem solving. That's one. And two, design gets a lot easier when you have clarity on the expectations and what you're supposed to do, when you have clarity on the task. Simply put, if you're given a task right now, for instance, to craft something in Figma, and you don't understand what you're supposed to craft, it's going to take you a while to figure things out. Compared to a scenario where, oh, you're told to do something and you know exactly what you're told to do, you understand exactly what that stuff is. Then when you're in Figma, you're not trying to figure out, what you are doing. You're just using the tools at your disposal to create the idea that you already have in mind. That's why sometimes if you're working on a personal portfolio or a personal project, you might notice that you must notice that it's faster than when you're working on actual client project. That's because for your project, you have your idea in your head, you have a clear understanding of what you want to put down, and then you just go at it. For a client's project, they come and they're telling you that, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's do that. And before you know, you're confused and you're asking yourself, okay, how did we get here? Right? Let's come back to this. The reason why this makes a lot of sense is that before a designer or someone, definitely a designer, would come up with a design concept that you see, that you shout wow, or come up with a storyline, or come up with a project that you see and you actually exclaim, right? It means that there is a deeper meaning between it. And I'm not just talking dribble kind of designs, I'm talking actual full-blown projects, right? Oftentimes there is a deeper story that is very, very interesting to hear. So basically, Mamo is saying that designers cannot escape storytelling. As a designer, storytelling should be a part of it. You should be able to tell a story with your flows, with your wireframes, with your entire project structure. You should be able to tell a story. You should be able to tell a story to your recruiters, to your stakeholders, to your users, right? So that's what she's trying to say here, that number one, designers cannot escape storytelling. And two, every great design begins with an even better story. And we're going to go deeper into why this makes sense in a bit. But yeah, let's get started. What are UX case studies, right? You've been hearing them every time, and I think it would make a lot of sense if we just try to break it down to its simplest form. So think of UX case study as a transactional currency between recruiters and designers, because generally the set of people or the category of people that UX case studies matters to the most is usually recruiters who that want to recruit for something, right? Or designers, people that actually want to work on something. So recruiters, because they might need your skill set to come and join them in their company to help them build stuff and everything, and they want to see what you can do, right? So that's why they would go out and start scanning through hundreds of thousands of case studies. And then designers, because that's your way of showing the world, of showing recruiters that, look, I'm this good and this is the proof, right? A layman or let's say backend developer, for instance, will not come and be reading a designer's UX case studies because, I mean, what am I using it for? Right? They might want to scroll to the parts where the designer is talking about, oh, we have to partner with this team, the backend did this, right? But generally, they don't need your case studies. It's primarily between you and the recruiters. Yeah, so yes, UX case studies are just examples of design work that designers include in their portfolio. Basically, what they do is that the designer uses them to tell stories in text and images to show how they handle the problem. It's basically, UX case studies are accounts of your work. I'm trying to break it down to the simplest form, right? They are accounts of your work. They are like, yeah, I think that makes sense. They are accounts of your work, right? So people that are able to do it well end up being able to showcase their skills successfully. I said successfully because you might be showcasing your skill to someone and then they don't want to hire you. Like that's unsuccessful, right? So when I say showcasing their skills successfully, it means that you're showcasing it to someone and it's doing what it's intended to do. I mean, you're showing someone your work that they hire you and they ended up hiring you, right? Yeah. So that's basically like the breakdown. There's no crazy kind of definition and stuff like that. That's just what your UX case studies are. You've done the work, now you want to tell people about the work. How do you tell them? By putting in the proper UX case studies, right? It's how designers actually show their skills. It's how designers actually tell the stories behind their projects. That's what it is. Now, the question is, how do you approach case studies, right? How are people supposed to approach case studies? Let's keep it at the back of your mind that recruiters, and I'm going to be saying recruiters a lot because primarily that's what we're doing this thing. We don't necessarily need it for ourselves. If I needed something for myself, I would be jotting down, taking notes for me. But the reason why it needs to be, like a proper UX case studies and be properly structured is because I'm not just doing it for me, I'm doing it for the people that might want to hire me and the people that I want to impress, right? So recruiters want candidates that can obviously communicate through designs and explain themselves clearly. That's what they want. They don't want someone that can't do that. That's what they want. So what you are going to, or what you need to aim to achieve is to create a kind of UX portfolio, a case study that properly persuades or captivate them. Really, you don't want to do something and then they're going through it and then they're like, no. Because really, how these things works is that, and you need to always remember this. Not everyone is going to go through the entirety of your case studies. Not everyone. Oftentimes, you're just going to skim through, scroll through the first couple of pages, scan through the headlines and try to see the conclusion, or try to see your, the achievements of the project and everything. Nobody will see, because most times case studies are long, right? I mean, there are blog posts that people have decided not to read because they look long, talk less of case studies that might be, longer. So they don't have time, like they don't really have time to read through everything. Yeah, so that's one sad thing about yes case studies. Recruiters don't read through everything. Even people don't read through everything. But you need to learn how to structure it in such a way that even if they are skimming through, right, they will still get the point. They will still understand your thought process. They will still be drawn in by what they are saying, right? So that should be always be your approach to case studies. Now, whenever you're writing these things, you don't want to just give people a flat line. Yeah, you need to be straight to the point, but it needs to be straight in point in such a way that it takes people through a broad of emotions or through a range of emotions, right? You want a story that has a beginning, middle, and an end. And that's exactly how, that's also how, that's how good storytellers tell stories. That's how the best movies that you've seen, that you've fallen in love with today, that's how they are. You start initially, they might not grab you at at the beginning. Some movies do, some don't, right? They might not grab you at the beginning, but you're like, let's give it a chance. And then it gets into the middle of the movie, and you're like, I'm hooked. And then because you were hooked at the middle, you want to see the conclusion. That's exactly what we're saying here, right? Your case studies should have an introduction, right? Then it should have a middle, and it should have an end. Somebody is unmuted. If you're the one, can you please mute yourself back so I don't get distracted? Okay, I think that's sorted. Thank you very much. All right. So like I said, beginning, middle, and end, never a flat report. Now, by flat report, it means it shouldn't just be still. Oh, we started this design, we worked on the design, we finished the design. No. But then the overview of this project is this. This was I mean, those are the introductions, by the way. This was the problem we're trying to solve, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets into the middle part where you're talking about what we do, how we did it. Like, you want to take us through a range of emotions. Oh, so we tried this, we noticed this, that, and we took this route, which made us realize this. In turn, we did this. And at the end of the day, you understand? At the end of the day, we're able to achieve this, we're able to do this, and we learned that, it needs to be as interesting as that. Right. Now, let's move on to anatomy of a UX case study. Right. Let's just break down what that is. Like what we say anatomy of a UX case study. Now, whenever you're writing a case study, note that there are 7, I call them steps or sections. Yeah, let's call them sections, right? When you're working on a case study, your case studies should be broken into 7 sections. All right. You would, if you go through case studies online today, you'd notice the same thing, that even though they are longer than each other, right, these sections are there. Like the sections don't change. And the first thing is the overview. We're going to explain all this, don't worry. So the overview is like a quick summary, of the company or product. Like overview is like, oh, I'm trying to summarize, this is the product that we've done. Maybe the products for a Home Depot, delivery app or something like that. I'm giving you a quick summary of everything, right? For a lot of you that have done projects in the past, what you're doing, you should understand what summary means, right? So you're trying to give us an overview of, or a summary of the entirety of the project. So you touch on each and every part of the project, or even each and every part of the case study, but you touch them briefly. This is not where you're supposed to be describing the entirety of the problem statement or describing the users. No, you might want to mention them, that you are doing something for this to solve this very, very briefly, because this is the overview. The reason why this is important is that sometimes, like I said, people don't get a chance, or people cannot see through reading your entire case studies. So sometimes by reading the overview, they should be able to have an idea of the content of the case studies, right? By reading the overview, they should be able to have the content. So that's what you need to keep in mind whenever you're writing your own overview, right? So the first thing is overview. You need to give them a summary of everything. And then the problem statement. So now that you've given us a summary of everything, if I'm drawn in and I want to continue reading, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Like, why did this project need to happen? Tell me why. I know sometimes when people are asking others why, it might sound like, why is this person asking me why? Why? But yeah, we need to know why before I, get drawn into everything. All right, why? And you also notice that in good storytelling, like people set the plot. I mean, they set the plot for things that are going to happen in the future, right? So sometimes you see that, oh, they're showing you, maybe it looks like an unnecessary scene sometimes. Maybe they're showing you somebody walking by a building, and then they just show you that building and show you that the building is old, and then they continue showing the person walking by that building, and you're like, what was the point of that? Right? So perhaps they're trying to tell you that, okay, this building is old and it's haunted and it's going to cause problems later, but let's just give that down for now. Do you understand? Back to what we're trying to say. Tell us why the project needed to happen. Tell us, why was the why did we need to solve that problem? Right? And what was the desired outcome? What was the goal? If you're saying we're solving a problem to end world hunger, or what, like, why? So that people will stop dying, or so that the country's economy would, or so that the world's economy would improve, blah blah blah. We need to know why. And then you also want to talk about your users and your audience, right? So after you've given us a quick summary and you've told us why the project needed to happen, we need to know who you're doing it for. All right, who are you doing it for? Like, who are your audience, right? So you need to help the reader understand who would use the product generally. That's what we're trying to see here, right? I think this is pretty much self-explanatory, but then we have roles and responsibilities. So you need to talk about what you did, who else worked on it, how big the team was, what each person did. Here you might not, go very deep into details for everything, right? But you want to acknowledge the people that are involved in the project. So if I'm saying, oh, I worked on this with something team, XYZ team, John Doe, Jane Doe, right? Tell us what each person did. I need to understand, right? And then there is the scope and constraints, right? What are the things that were involved? Like what were the limiting factors? What were the problems that you encountered? So things like budget, time frame, budget, time frame, timeline, time zones. What were the constraints that were encountered when you're trying to work on this project? We also need to know the problems you faced, not just telling us problem statements and telling us your users and telling us your responsibilities. Like, what were the problems that you faced? And then the next section is the process and what you did, right? So it is at this point that you will give a step-by-step run through of what you did and why you did it. Do you understand? Give us the process of everything. So if you moved point A to point B, tell us that you moved point A to point B, and tell us, tell us why you moved point A to point B. Like, why did you do it? Right? This is, this is like, I think this is the most important part. This is like the middle part of the curve that I showed earlier. All right, that curve that says you need to have a beginning, have a middle, and an end. The middle is the graph goes very high up in the middle. So this is where the middle comes in. The middle is where you talk about the process and what you did. This part has to be interesting enough to captivate people. It needs to be interesting enough to make people want to stay. Because if you are not properly able to articulate what you did, it's just going to be there. Like, you're not a good storyteller then. And then there's the outcomes and the results. Like, what happened in the end? What goals were achieved? What lessons did you learn? How many did you learn? These are things that come in under outcomes and lessons. Now you would see that for every single one of these sections that we mentioned, if you think broad from the case studies that you've seen, or think broad about the case study that you've seen, you see that each of them have every single one of these sections, right? You had an overview, like an introduction. That's where you see that first section that just talks about, oh, this is a case study for this, that, we did this, we did that, we did that. And then you talk about, oh, this is what we're trying to solve. These are the users that we're building for. And then it's around the users part that you start seeing them putting things like user persona, right? And then they're showing that, oh, David is a 46 years old banker. He lives with his wife and kids in this, that, right? And then you see them talk about roles and responsibilities, saying that, oh, I handle this, I handle that. And then oftentimes they don't necessarily talk about scope and constraints, which is bad, right? Because no man is an island, no man is perfect. No designer is perfect. Design is not even set in stone. Design changes. That's why trends come and trends go. The principles remain the same, but design itself changes, right? The concept that people come up with changes. So you need to tell us the constraints and the limiting factors that you encountered, how the different time zones of everyone in the team affected, how the budget affected, stuff like that, how inflation affected the budget, things like that need to be talked about. And then you talk about, the process and what you did. This is the part where you really, really need to grab people. They need to feel what you feel. You need to be able to take them through your journey on the project, right? And afterwards, you talk about, okay, since you've gone through sections 1 to 6, this is what happened in the end. That's number 7. Like, these are the outcomes, these are the goals that we achieved, and these are the lessons that we learned. So generally, that's the anatomy of a UX case study. I hope I was able to simplify it enough to make it very easy for you to attempt yours when it's time. But yes, now let's move to how to write a case study. Like, we've defined it, we've talked about, how to approach it, we've talked about the anatomy, and now I want to talk about how to actually write it. Because you would be writing case study, you will be writing case studies personally, and then in order to attract recruiters. So let's dive right in. The first step is to give your project a title. Now, excuse me, the big mistake that plenty of people make is that they don't title their projects, or they don't title their case studies properly. Strong titles can either make or break your project. And I gave an example here. Imagine a designer wanting to write a case study, and then their title is Home Depot, or fintech websites, or fintech app, or education app. I mean, what is that? Right? Like that doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. And then you see some comment, they can say fintech app user research, or fintech app UX case studies. I'm trying to say, like, I'm trying to switch Home Depot to fintech app because I wanted to use something that is a little bit more relatable. So imagine someone coming to write Home Depot user research, or fintech app user research. That's still fair. Do you get? It's still fair, but it's not great. But then compare that to someone who does, by the way, someone's camera is on. I don't think you intended that. So if that's you, you can turn it off. Yeah, so compare all those to someone who says, oh, Home Depot user research for mobile app checkout. Now that is specific, that is targeted, that is apt, and that is sweet, really. Because now I know exactly what I'm about to put myself through. I know exactly what I'm about to put myself through. And that's why, for instance, right? No, it gives me like an insight into what I'm expecting. I like using movie analogies, right? That's why sometimes you see some movies and then from their titles you would know like what you're about to witness. So there's a movie called The Man Who Harnessed the Wind. You know, The Man Who Harnessed the Wind. I mean, even if you've not seen that movie, you know that it has to do with some like a person that actually harnessed the wind in some ways, right? So when you're watching the movie and you're sitting through everything, you know that I'm still expecting somebody that harnessed the wind. And you know, at the end of the day, we eventually followed the story and we saw how he actually how he eventually harnessed the wind, right? And then there is the likes of Home Alone. Now, Home Alone is very, very short, but then when you hear Home Alone, it means somebody was Home Alone, right? But if I say Home Depot is like it's a company. Like what is happening? Do you understand? Like that's the difference. So the first step is to give your project a title that helps people see a little bit, have a little bit of insight into what they're about to see through. Then after that, you need to write an outline. Now, in fact, for this outline part, you can just think about the anatomy that we talked about earlier. That can be your outline. You understand? For your members, let's just come back to this. So after you've given your case study a title, a project title, right? You now need to take this. This should be your case study, UX case study like direction or EX case study guide. Just these steps because they are what every case study needs. So this should be your outline, right? The outline part basically just means that you should write out the points that you need to basically lay out your thoughts. Do you understand? Have a structure of the big picture that you want to build upon. So if I'm saying I'm writing a case study, I don't want an outline of the sections that are going to be in there. These are what are going to be in there. Right? I don't have to start writing every paragraph under each one yet. But let me just put this outline down and say, okay, these are the things that I need to come up with for this project. All right, so now that we've gotten this out of the way, let's actually start putting points under each one. Which brings us to the next one, fill in the details, right? So once you've gotten a heading, right, and then you've gotten that anatomy, the list of sections, right? The next thing is for you to actually fill in the details. Now, filling in the details, you need to, under each and every single point, do you understand? Under each and every single like sections in that outline, you need to start writing things that you remember. You need to start writing things that you remember. The reason why this is important, is that case studies are a big deal. You don't just write them passively. You need to be actively involved in the process of writing your case study because we would need the insight from you because you actually worked on it, right? And sometimes you might have forgotten things. You might be mixing information together. You might let's just leave it that you might have forgotten things, right? So having a outline and just highlighting things, okay, under the problems, for instance, right, that we encountered. Oh, I can remember that at some point, right, we were not able to hold meetings effectively because of, unstable or because of poor data or poor internet. Yeah, let me just note that down for now. I can remember that at some point, the designer that was working, I mean, one of the days that were working on the project, the people that we started the work with, they left to join another company and then we're back to looking for a designer, a developer. And then when we brought them in, we had to walk them through the project again from scratch, trying to help them understand what we're trying to achieve, where we started from, where we are, where we're going. And that was tough. I can remember that. So let me write that down. Do you get? So it's when you're done writing those things down that you now be able to come back and flesh out the paragraphs. It's like it's just like jotting down your outlines, but this one, you've jotted down the outlines and then you're putting down, you're building up on the outlines. So in this step, now that you've outlined everything, this is where things like, the process and what you did is very, very, this is where it becomes very important, because this is where you start writing things, about the case study. And like I said earlier, when you're talking about the process and what you did, that should take a bulk of the effort, because that is what is going to take people through your journey with you. Like that's what you're going to use to take people on the journey with you. And when you're writing this thing, you should be answering questions like, what you did. Do you understand? You should ask questions like what you did, why you did what you did, what the result was, and what you learned. Right? It's not just the what you did section should not just be, okay, I did this and then you walk away. No, it doesn't work that way. The best way I can understand the action you're taking is if you give me a little bit of context or a lot of context, right? In fact, a lot of context is better than a little bit of context, right? But context is key. That's what we're talking about here. So I'm talking about the fact that, oh, I did A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Fine, you've told me that this is what you did. Like, what research method did you use, right? So if I did something, what did I do? Like, why did I choose to, do it the way I did it? After I've done that, what was the result and what did I learn? So let's take this back a little bit to back then when we're talking about user research or UX research. Now, for a lot of you that were able to join the calls or were able to listen in on the calls, you know that we talked about there being different subsets and different methods of user research. We talked about the qualitative and the quantitative, right? We talked about the quantitative being result and being research that comes with a lot of data, and 90% of the time, or almost all the time, and almost all the time, those data comes back structured. So I'm taking a little detour here. So for the quantitative research, that's where that's where you have the kinds of research like surveys, where you see people say, oh, can you please help me fill out this form? I'm trying to work on this product, blah, blah, blah. And then people fill the form, and then you are being in those forms, you are seeing questions like, would you rather use A or B? Would you rather do this or that, right? The thing is that when a lot of people, let's say on 100 people or 1,000 people, 1 million people see that form, and then they fill and submit, the author of that form is going to get responses that are structured. That's what quantitative are. Even if that's what quantitative methods, are talking about. Even if I get 1 million responses, every single one of those million responses are already going to be categorized for me. So if I'm scrolling through the questions, I'm seeing that, oh, 70% of people chose A, 20% of people chose B. For this one, 80% chose A, 20% chose B. Do you understand? That's quantitative. But then when we're talking about qualitative research, or when we're talking about qualitative research, then those are the research that when you do them, you get data, right? But they are not as structured as those of quantitative, right? But they are more effective in some sort, right? And that's where you hear things like one-on-one interviews, going on site to actually talk to people to get their, insights into why they are doing what they are doing and how you can help them. Now, the thing is, compared to a process where you can send the form to multiple people or millions of people to fill at once, and this one where you're talking to somebody. Now, those millions of people, they are just typing. In fact, some of them might not even pay attention to their selection. They might not even think about it. But if I'm in front of someone and I'm interviewing you, I'm like, okay, why do you do this? Why do you want this? I mean, before you lie to me, it's going to it's going to be hard, because that's why even these processes take longer, because the person would want to think, okay, I see. Why are you asking? Oh, I see. Okay, if I'm going to do that, then I will do this. And then when they're giving you those information, you start taking notes. By the time you get back to your office or wherever it is you're working from, you would see that you have so much information that you now need to start sorting out yourself. Right. So let's come back to what we are talking about here. If for my project or in my project, I said, oh, I did user research. What this section is saying is that after you've told me what you did, tell me why you chose the user research. I did surveys, sorry. I used surveys in my user research, right? Now the question is, why did you choose to use surveys? Why did you not choose to use a focus group? Or why did you not choose to use one-on-one interviews? Do you understand? Those are different methods of user research. Why did you choose to just send surveys instead, right? And then after you've told me why you choose to send surveys, I'm now going to ask you, what are the results? Like, what did you achieve from those surveys that you sent out? So if the surveys were able to help me understand ABC, XYZ, right? I want to know what those ABC, XYZs are. And after you've answered that, you now also need to talk about, okay, you've told me that you use surveys, right? You've told me that you choose it because, it was what could help you reach your target audience. You've told me that because of the survey, you're able to get more information from a higher, number of people that they would prefer to use this product than the competitor's product. Fine. So what have you learned? What would you do differently? These are the 4 questions that must come in under the, what I did section. And in case you're wondering where we're at, I'm just going to go back to show you. We're talking about step 6. So everything up until step 6, they are important, right? But they don't beat this. This step 1 to 5 are what we call the introduction. Let's put it that. And then step 6, I know it's weird. It's supposed to be, 1 and 2 are supposed to be introduction, while maybe 3, 4, 5 are supposed to be the middle. But nah, nope. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are like your intro part. They are not where you bring the hammer down. It's in step 6 that you need to bring in the hammer down. Tell us exactly what you did, why you did it, what are the goals, what did you learn? And then you talk about number 7, which is outcomes, lessons, and then conclusions. Actually, part of your outcomes can even come under the process, because you're telling us what you did and what you did them, what the goal was, and then you're also telling us yeah, so those ones some of that can also come into under the middle, but that's the structure that we're talking about. So let's come back to this, right? Don't forget, you need to talk about what you did, why you did it, what the result was, and what you learned. So I have an example here, right, of just of how this can look. So imagine someone wanting to tell you that they did usability testing on something, right? Like what we did, that was this section that we're just talking about, right? And then they wrote, we did usability testing on the checkout of the Home Depot app, or the Home Depot mobile app, rather. And that's what he said. Like, just come and tell you that, oh, we did usability testing. Now, the question is, like, why is this weak? Like, why does it not work? But it's weak because it only tells you what the person did. It doesn't address why the person did it. It doesn't address what happened. It doesn't address what you learned, which is something that negates everything we've been talking about here, and you don't want that. So an example of what you should be aiming to do is this other part. That, imagine a designer writing this in their case study, and they say, oh, in order to evaluate the new checkouts on the Home Depot mobile app, in order to do that, that was what we wanted to do. So in order to do that, we relied on using metrics in conjunction with 8 usability tests. Like, I'm breaking down everything that we did now, right? And then I'm now saying, because we did this allowed us to gain deeper understanding through combining both qualitative and quantitative information. Like, at this point, I'm literally already walking through everything. You can feel the person's involvement in this project, because it sounds like they know what they are saying. And that's the thing with perfectly crafted case studies, right? People hear you like an expert, right? Because if I'm saying, oh, there's this problem, and then we took this data, and based on this data, we're able to structure this flow, and we're able to do. I sound like a pro already, and who wouldn't want to hire me because I'm saying, for saying things like that. So let's continue. The person kept on to say, although users were able to get through the checkout more quickly, and this is an observation. We've talked about what they did and why they did it. Now, the person went ahead to add an observation. Although users were able to get through the checkout more quickly, although they did that, they continued to struggle with the shipping section. Right? I've told you what we did and why we did it. Now I'm telling you what I observed from that thing that we did. Do you understand? And then going forward, discussions with users revealed that oftentimes products in one order have different shipping addresses, which was possible but difficult in the current checkout. This, my friend, is a very well detailed account of what they did. right? Now this version is stronger because it goes beyond just talking about what was done. It provided, depth. It provided depth, provided context. And that's why people will understand it better. That's why the recruiters will understand it better. And that's what we're saying. Providing depth is what would set you apart from your peers, from your fellow designers, right? There are a lot of designers out there every day that are losing access opportunities just because of how they articulate their thoughts, how they tell their stories. Do you understand? So it's very important that you not only talk about what you did, but provide tips, help them see through, right? Help them see through everything. Talk about the problems that you face. Talk about what you're supposed to do. Talk about why you did it. Talk about how you did it. Talk about the things that you learned. Those things are very, very important. Right? Articulating your designs, it's going to, position you as more mature and more thoughtful. And I have to say mature because yes, if a company wants to hire you and then you're talking like someone who is not mature enough to handle it, they are definitely not going to go with you. Right? That's another thing, right? They're definitely not going to go with you. They need to hear the professionalism in your voice. They need to hear the maturity in your voice. Not necessarily, it doesn't even have to be maturity by age, but maturity by experience. Right? There are people that when you hear them talk, you know that, oh, this person has at least like 8 years experience in this field. And there are people that when you hear them talk, you be like, are you new? You're new, right? Yeah, I could tell. Right? You don't want to be the other category. Nope, you don't want to be the latter. You want to be the person that will talk about your project, that will give an account of what they've done, and people will go like, yes, it's you that I want to work with. All right. And then step 4 is writing headlines. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, maybe you've been writing everything we're talking about. I mean, I know we've talked about a lot of things. You're probably thinking, okay, if I'm writing something as long as this, who's going to read it, right? That's a good point, actually, right? And that's why for this step, it's important that you distill things down, that you break everything down so that you're focusing on the key highlights. So what this means is that imagine that I have written or drafted, I don't want to use written, let's use drafted because it's rough, it's not complete yet. Let's say I have drafted my case studies. I've talked about all those problems, what I did, constraints, scope, everything, right? At this point, it's necessary that for every single step of what you've done or what you're doing or what you did or what you've written down that you did, you need to add a headline for each step. The reason why this is important is that, and it's also the same reason why we use headings and subheadings in blog posts, is to make the information more digestible. Part of the reason why people tend to run away from actual newspapers. I mean, there are still people that read newspapers till today. But part of the reason why people tend to run away from actual newspapers is because there are no proper, demarcations sometimes. Like I'm holding this gigantic paper in my hand and Lord, where do I start from? Nobody wants that. Now, compare that to people that read tablets, blog posts on their phones or books on the Amazon Kindle, right? It's different because I'm not met with an overload of information at once, right? I'm not. I am as my face is as my eyes are scanning through, I'm seeing breakpoints. I mean, you all designers know what breakpoints are. I'm seeing breakpoints that have very clear-cut headings, right? And because of that, it makes the burden easier to bear. Let's just put it at that, because if I was about to scan through everything and there was no break, I'll be like, oh my God, this is too much information. Right? But if I'm scanning through and then there's a break, I can take a pause and read that headline and keep scanning through again and take a pause and read the next headline. So basically that's what it does, right? So for each section of the outline that you're working with, you need to write a single headline. A single headline. So here's what I mean. Look at our outline, for instance, right? This is the outline. Now, I'm not just going to write users and audience. I'm not just going to write scope and constraints. I'm not just going to write outcomes and lessons. Do you understand? I'm going to make it a little bit more captivating, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more engaging. So anybody that's reading through would have an idea of what the content of those outcomes are, what the content of that process is, what the content of the scope is. Do you understand? So writing headlines are very, very important. And the best way to write to write great headlines is to write them like you're writing tweets. I saw this and I was like, yeah, this is apt, right? Because think about Twitter or X as it is now. I'm still struggling to call it X. But think about X, and you notice that sometimes you might have, maybe you have a hot take or something, or have a gist that you want to put out there for people to, react to and everything. Twitter is going to humble you. You cannot put more than 140 characters in one tweet. Right, I hear they increase it, but I'm not really sure. But yeah, Twitter will humble you. You have to reduce. So if you had like 2 paragraphs worth of gist, you might have to be like, you know what? Okay, this part is not important. That's exactly what you need to do. Cut out the parts that are not important. So you might cut out, oh, this part is not important. Nah, we don't need this. This looks like it's important, but you can go. And then at the end, you are left with a crisp 140 characters heading that perfectly describes what you're trying to say. And the thing with and the reason why Twitter was able to, take the word the way it did was because it's short. Like the tweets are mostly short and straightforward. If you look at all the memes that you read today, right, or other pictures you screenshotted today, very short tweets that where people are giving takes on something, I like, this is deep. I resonate with this. As short as the tweet is, you are still able to resonate with it. It's because they've stripped out everything that is not important and they've been able to cramp all the important information into 140 characters. And that's what you should aim to do with your headlines, right? By sticking to a character limit. Now I'm using 140 character because that's Twitter. I mean, that's like, so you can choose to use 140 character. You can choose to go maybe slightly higher. I don't know. But working with the character limit will force you to identify the most important, points of the case study, right? Which would then become, headlines when you are actually trying to put this out there. So headlines are important. Headlines are important, right? And whenever you're trying to write them, ensure that you make them as concise as possible. We've been saying concise since, and it's because there's no time really. Nobody's going to sit through 40 pages of case studies. Nobody's going to sit through 20. In fact, oftentimes people don't sit through 4. So you don't want to be in that situation where you are, and even I personally don't see through a lot of pages and case studies. I don't even necessarily read them. I just scan through. If I do it, it means a lot of people also do. And definitely means recruiters do, because recruiters are doing it to hire someone. And how it can be when people are looking for jobs. They will get a lot of applications, and if they're having to sort out maybe 10,000 applications, or even let's break it down to 5,000 applications, or even if it's 2,000, or even if it's 1,000, I'm not going to spend like 40 minutes on each one, or 30 minutes on each one, 20 minutes on each one. Worst case scenario, 2 to 3. Scan through. Oh, this looks promising. Next. This looks promising. Next. That's what you're going to see. Right. So keep your headlines concise. Best practice would be to work with the character limits. Now let's talk about some examples, right? So look at how these headlines are, right? Imagine the part where you're talking about what you did, right? And why you did it. So you say things like, the type of research I did and why I did it. You say things like, oh, these are the findings from the research. Oh, you say things like, these are the impact of the research or product development. Do you understand? So when you have headlines like that, when you turn your text or turn your steps into proper headlines, anybody that is seeing this doesn't necessarily have to make themselves read through everything. They can just, okay, this section that is talking about the research. Okay, this is not what I'm looking for. Let me go and find the impact. Okay, yeah, I found it. And then they can read exactly what they need. But imagine that these steps were just, the same font with everything else. It's going to be hard to scan. Adding headings, adding breaks, adding sections makes it easier to scan, for people to scan through, because that's what people do with your case studies. A lot of the people that go through your case studies do not read through, and that's the fact. Nobody, like not a lot of people ask. In fact, nobody has time. Everybody's struggling with 24 hours. Right? So if you're trying to force people to, spend some of their time with you, then it better be good. Really, really better be good. Okay. Then a good way to test, whether or not you have strong headlines is to ask yourself, like, would someone understand the main points of my project by skimming through the headlines? Like, would they really, if I put my case study out there to be, I have someone just going through the headlines and scanning through, would they understand what I'm doing? If the answer is no, then you have to go back to the drawing board to start again. But if the answer is yes, congratulations, you can move on to the next step. All right, I hope we're able to understand that. So generally, you need to excuse me. Generally, or in summary, these are just what you need to keep in mind, right? The first thing is that you need to tell a design story that progresses meaningfully. Like we've talked about everything, right? This is just like a summary to reiterate everything that I'm talking about. First thing is that you need to ensure that your story progresses meaningfully and smoothly. Don't go and start telling me a story, trying to tell me a story and then confusing me at the end. That's not going to help you in any way, right? So tell a story that progresses meaningfully. Start from the introduction, give us an overview, right? Talk about the problem, talk about the audience, talk about the scope, talk about all these things. Take me through the journey, right? 2, tighten or rearrange your account into a linear, straightforward narrative. We did not say linear, straightforward, graph. The graph cannot be linear, it cannot be a flat line. It's the narrative. Be concise, be clear, right? So even if there are a lot of things that can distract people or that can make people not understand what you're doing, cut them out. Okay? Case studies are already a lot of work for you. You should not now make them a lot of work for the people that you're telling to come and read. Do you understand? Then reinforce each what. Like every time you say, what she did, reinforce it with a how or a why. No, a how and a why, yeah, both, right? So if I'm saying, oh, I did this, question is, how did I do it? And why did I did it? Right? You should remember this from what we're talking about. Talk about what you did, talk about what you did, talk about the lessons from it, and the rest. Then support text with the most appropriate visuals. Now, we cannot emphasize this enough. I've seen a lot of case studies where people just try to make it fine or good looking, and then they are not using exactly they're not using appropriate graphical representations. They just want to get something because it looks fine and it looks cool and makes their case study look nice. But that's not the point here, right? So screenshots of the final product, your pictures of your or exports of your wireframing, your user personas, your flowchart, your customer journey maps, ensure that you are reinforcing the text with the actual visuals. So when I'm talking about user persona, that should not be where I put my wireframing images, right? When I'm talking about wireframing, that should not be where I put my flowcharts. Do you understand? When I'm talking about prototyping, that should not be where I'm putting my user journey maps, because these sections are different from each other, right? So when I'm talking about user personas rather, or every other thing, should not be where I put my the post-it notes or the sticky notes for my brainstorming sessions, right? So you need to ensure that with every section, with every step that you're putting, you're adding appropriate visuals that actually complement what you're talking about. So anybody that sees it might not even necessarily have to read the text. From the visuals, they will understand exactly what that section is talking about. They can either decide to stay or move on, right? Then you feel free to use the best design tools that you know to customize and make things and make things look good. Like if you're good with Photoshop, fine, you can create your mockups by yourself. If you're good with Illustrator, you can, make edits, create illustrations, or turn your flowchart into illustrations, whatever it is that you want to do. Fine. It is after you've gotten these appropriate visuals that you can now go ahead and edit them and customize them. But you need to get the appropriate visuals first. It's very important. Then balance high with we. So acknowledge team members, contributions, shared victories, and setbacks. Now, the fact that you're the one writing a case study, right, doesn't mean that you were the only one that worked on it. You had, funny enough, it's possible that a designer, even like multiple designers worked in the project, and the one single him herself out, and then went to write a case study and put it out there like, oh, I did this, I. That's not gonna take you anywhere, all right? Because case studies are a journey, and the thing with journeys is that journeys have their own unique stories. Like there's always something. If you're going through a process of getting something, it's like, oh, if I'm trying to say, oh, I want to get ripped, like I want to get ripped, I want to, look grab and everything. And I'm going to the gym every day. Like the journey from point A to when I eventually get that body I'm looking for, there is a story. Like there's always going to be setbacks. Like, I'm not always going to want to go to the gym every day. Like, so if you're telling that story, giving that account, you need to tell us, yes, you try going to the gym every day. There are days where you don't feel like going to the gym, but so and so person would always, push you, and the person was always acting as your accountability partner. Oh, there are days where you'll be set to go to the gym, but then the rain will act as a setback and stop you from going. Do you get that? Is why you go to the gym, and then you get to the gym, and then you meet a set of people that are also training, and then you can join them, and then everybody maybe does bench press or something that day. Like, you can see that it's not just an I something. The fact that you are also including them in your case study doesn't make it any less yours. Do you understand? It just makes you someone that regards the team, someone that actually gives full account of things, right? Because if you're coming and you're saying hi, and then eventually maybe the recruiter knows that, but wait, though, I know one of the people that worked on this project. It's not just you now. Why are you trying to claim everything? That is going to be a problem for you, right? And then make your case study scannable. We talked about this, giving them proper headlines, right? Yeah. Right. So that anybody that is scanning through would be able to see at a glance what that section is talking about and either decide to stay or move on. Then last but not least, remove anything that doesn't help explain your thought process or advance the story. So like I said, nobody has 40 minutes to be sitting around reading one case study. So if there are things that you probably have added, maybe back then when you were still writing down the points under each of those outlines that you've not really stretched them out, if there are things that you've added that, just think about the Twitter effect, right? The fact that Twitter forces you to strip down your tweets, strip it down to, see, even if it's one letter higher than 140 characters, Twitter will tell you that it's not going to work. Unless you now want to go and start, adding it in the thread and everything. And yeah, I don't know. Thread posts are very long. Not everybody wants to always go through that. So yes, this is your case study, right? At least when people are reading things on Twitter or something like that, they know that they're about to expect something that it's funny and stuff like that. Who knows if your own case study is boring? They will not. People will not want to take that chance. So don't make your case studies excessively long, right? Anything that doesn't help, anything that doesn't advance the story, anything that doesn't explain your thought process, take it out. Right. And if you can do this, if you follow the steps, you'll be able to, come up with a well-structured case study, like a very, very well-structured case study. Now, we're also going excuse me, we're also going to be talking about some mistakes that people make currently with case studies. And I'm not going to take too much time on this. It's already, maybe used like, 57 minutes already. Okay, so let's move into case study mistakes you should avoid making in your portfolio. All right. First thing is your summary lacking information. Like when you're writing case study and you're writing your overview, like your summary should never lack information. Like I said, your summary is like a summary of everything. So you should contain a bit of everything. Excuse me. You want to talk about your roles, your responsibilities, the collaborators, the methods, the scope. Just talk about everything, but talk about them in bits. Do you understand? So that Anybody that is reading the summary already has an idea of what the big picture looks like. Very, very important. All right. Then sometimes some people only share the methods and the tools that they used in their product. So they say, oh, we use this method and then we use this tool, right? But the question is, okay, now that you've used the method and the tool, what then happened? What were your findings? What did you learn? What are you not going to do again? Do you understand? We know we've talked about this too, that you don't just want to give people the what. You want to give them more context into it. So even if you're telling us about, oh, I did that, prioritize outcomes also. It's not just listing things. The outcomes matter. What you found, outcomes matter. And a lot of times people don't add this. You just want to like write that, oh, I use this tool, I use that tool, I use that tool. I'm a multifaceted designer. I can use multiple tools. Okay, congratulations, Chief. But with all these tools that you're using, like what were the outcomes of each one? What did you achieve? That's very important. So then just be in the category of those people that just, share their tools. Share their method and their tools and not give the readers more context into what they achieved with those decisions that they made. Then only thinking in steps. Only thinking in steps. Now, describing the steps of your case study or your process is, and presenting them like, chronologically, step one, step two, step three, step four, step five. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not bad. But the thing with storytelling is that sections can be interwoven, right? You would notice that during the course of this call, I've been having to go back and forth. I might be talking about this now, and then I'm scrolling back to where we talked about approach, and then I'm coming back here, and I'm going back to where, it's safe to say that, oh, we've passed the approach section, right, or the anatomy section, and I should not go back there. But it was necessary that at this point or at some point in the future, I have to go back to reference those old things that we've talked about. And that's what we're saying, right? In reality, on paper, you might just write steps and then you're like, oh, step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this. But in reality, like, it's not a straight line. It's not just, that straightforward. Sections will be intertwined. You would have to reference other sections. So whenever you're writing, right? Whenever you're writing, it doesn't matter if you're in step 9, right? Whenever you're writing and there's a need to, whenever you're writing, even you're in step 9 and there's a need to reference step 1, be sure to reference step 1, right? Okay, you are in the constraint part and you're talking about, oh, we're facing this and that constraint. One of the major reasons why we're facing this constraint is because we have decided to use the ABC method during our initial research process, which in turn led us to do, XYZ, and that's why we are here. In order to face it, we explored, trying, DEF. Do you understand? To fix the problem. So now I'm talking about where we are. I'm talking about how we got here, which is the decision we made from step 1. And I'm talking about, oh, this is what I need to do in order to, move on to the next step. But excuse me, but that's what we're saying. Whenever you're writing case studies, you need to pinpoint, like, reference. It's okay to reference steps that you've gone past. Do you understand? It's okay to reference the step that you've gone past, but don't just think in stage. It's not always step 1, do A, step 2, do B, step 3, do C. No, all right? Okay, writing too much. Yes, this is another one. And I think we've solved that problem by introducing the tweeting approach, character limits. The best way to stop yourself is just think like you're writing for Twitter, all right? And then, please, not entirely like you're writing for Twitter. Twitter is filled with hot takes. Nobody wants hot takes here. Please, what we need is just don't write too much. Like we said, nobody has all the time in the world. I did not come to your Behance page or to your website or to your portfolio to start reading, Romeo and Juliet. It's not It's not a book I came to read. Books have hundreds of pages. I came to read a case study. A case study cannot have hundreds of pages. It cannot, right? So don't write too much. Ensure that you strip out the things that are not important to leave you with a write-up that is more concise, straight to the point, and still addresses everything you need it to address. Then there is using stock photos. Okay, now this is a very serious problem because it happens a lot. And why stock photos help, which I'm not going to lie to do. Please also keep it at the back of your mind that a lot of these photos are reused. The fact that there isn't a stock photo today, even if you paid for it, even if you bought it from Shutterstock or Freepik or Pictures or wherever, right? The fact that you paid for it doesn't mean someone elsewhere has not paid for that exact same image or has not used it in 100 places, right? So it's not safe for you to assume that because you paid for a stock image, then it's unique to you. It's not, right? And chances are when recruiters are scrolling through your case studies and then they are seeing stock photos, and if you're unlucky, it would be a stock photo that they've seen before. So they know that you obviously did not do this one because they've seen it in somebody else's project. Now the question is, how are you going to defend that one, right? So that's why we said use appropriate visuals. Like, use appropriate visuals. Don't just go and get images online because you think that they are the best. But no, right? Your images should be unique to you. And after now, I'm going to share. We're going to go through someone's case study, right? Case studies rather, because he has a couple of them. But we'll probably just go through one because of time, and then you see in real time exactly what we're talking about. Use pictures that are unique. See, when you're working with case studies or when you're working on case studies, right? It's not which one is the finest. That's not the point. It's not, oh, which one is the finest? No. It's which one is most compelling, most engaging. I'm not saying you should now deliberately try to make your case studies ugly. No, that's not the point either. But the first thing is the compelling nature of it. Like, does it work? Are you able to effectively give the account of what you're trying to give? Are you able to do that properly? Right? So coming back to what we're talking about, using stock photos might not be your best bet. Take actual pictures of everything you're working on, right? If you scribbled on paper, take those screenshots. If you use post-it notes or sticky notes on a board, take those pictures, right? If you created your wireframe in Figma, export it as an image. If you want to make it look cool and everything, use your Photoshop to put it in a frame, in a mock-up, and then insert it in your case study. But stay away from stock photos because it doesn't make your work look original. I'm not talking when you're just designing. If you're designing a site design project, that's fine. That's a whole different conversation. But in your case studies, right, you're giving an account of what you've gone through, what you did. How is a stock photo an account of what you did? I don't know if you understand where we're coming from. So using stock photos, nope, out of it. Then we have forgetting to close the case study properly. Now, it's very easy to get things wrong at the last minute. It's very easy to get things wrong at the last minute. You might have written a perfectly good case study, but then you didn't conclude properly, and then people are like, where does it end? A case study is not part one, part two kind of deal where you're like, oh, season 2 is coming. There is no season 2. It's just that, right? So if you don't close it properly, right, anybody going through are not going to get the clear picture, right? So here's the thing. Whenever you are working on your case study, right, ensure that we've talked about the structure in the beginning where we are like, we need to have a heading, a middle, and a body. I mean, an introduction, a middle, and a conclusion, right? That's like the step. So when you start, right, and you're building up into the middle where you talk about what you did, everything that goes into that, and then you're coming down to the conclusion. The conclusion should now be where you tell them, okay, so based on everything that we've told you so far, these were the results. This is the conclusion. At the end of the day, we're able to come up with a product that did A, B, C, X, Y, Z. A product that is currently listed on this. A product that currently has 1 million, blah, blah, blah. A product that does it, a product that does that. And in all this, we're able to learn that this, that. So, so definitely going forward, I am going to be looking at blah, blah. I'm going to be using blah, blah to do blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much for listening. That is a lot better than you're coming to conclude and you're giving us, mock-ups of different screens of the product. That is not a conclusion. That is not a conclusion. That is just you splashing mock-ups around. People have seen enough of mock-ups. Mock-ups are everywhere. If I want to see very beautiful mock-ups, I can get them at the snap of my finger, right? That is not what is going to impress the recruiters in your case studies. I'm not saying in just, design presentation. I'm saying in your case study. We're talking about case study here. So everything that we're talking about is unique, to case studies, right? I mean, nobody's going to tell you don't use a stock picture when you're designing. I mean, who does that? But in your case study, we're saying don't use stock images. So it's the same thing with forgetting to close. Don't just write and go. You need to close properly. Take people through the entire journey. Remember, your case study is not a series that, even if you end it badly in season 1, people are like, don't worry, there's going to be season 2. If you end it badly, that's it, right? People are always going to remember that because this is your case study. You're supposed to spend a lot of time in crafting this thing. All right. Yeah. So in your conclusion, right, you should just talk about everything, the lessons, the limitations, what you've learned. The truth is nobody's project reaches perfection. None. But then again, with every single project that you do, you learn. So that's what you're also going to be talking about there, the fact that that, some of these steps that you took or decisions that you took were born from A, B, C, X, Y, Z. But with everything that you've gone through with this project, you've been able to understand that this is this and that is that. And for subsequent projects, you are definitely going to be doing A, B, C, X, Y, Z. That is a very nice one. Anybody that says that will know you're human, right? Nobody's saying, come and tell us that, oh, I fucked up here, I messed up it. No, right? But we're saying that it should show that you actually feel what you're writing, that you actually felt every part of the process. And that's what they want to see. So sometimes what people do, right, or what recruiters do, is they read the summary, they scan through the middle, and then they read the conclusion. And of course, as you're scanning, they're also noticing the pictures and everything that is. So in 5 minutes, or in 3 minutes, or in 2 minutes, they will have gone through, or I'm making hand gestures right now. They would have gone through everything, and then they would be left with the decision of whether or not to recruit you, right? And then you want it to be that in your case, it's always a yes. Let's get this. Let's get this person. This person is the best. Best fit for us. All right, so please don't forget to close your case study properly. Follow the outline, follow the outline to the latter. Follow the outline to the latter, and then once you've done that, you will be fine. And I think last but not the least, being the only one who reads your case studies. The fact that you are not seeing an error doesn't mean it's not there. The fact that you're not seeing a typo doesn't mean it's not there. Can't count the number of times where I might be reading it. In fact, this should have happened to a lot of us where someone would type something wrongly, but you read it right because you have an idea of what they're about to say. So your brain automatically does that trick where it helps you see past, or it helps you just move past errors, right? And it makes it make sense in your head. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but you're just reading through. And even though there are typos, you're understanding exactly everything you're reading. It can be like that if you're the only one reading your case study, right? So the thing is, you should not be the only one that reads, even if you spent 4 weeks on it. Even if that's how long it took you. The fact that I spent 4 weeks doesn't mean that, because I spent 4 weeks, it means that everything is perfect. No, give it to a peer to read, or a buddy, or a friend. It doesn't matter who. Have them read through, right? And the thing is, the good thing about this practice is that if you have somebody read through your case study and they don't understand it, there's a high chance that your recruiter is also not going to understand it. So once you see that, John is reading this and he doesn't understand, okay, I have to go back. John, how far, which part don't you understand? Just tell me so I can work on it, right? If you can't even find anyone, like if you cannot find anyone, to give yourself time. I cannot count the number of times where there are times where I have to work all through the night. I mean, I've been doing that a lot recently lately because I have so many things on my plate, right? So here's what happens. I might have finished working on something and then I would just be like, okay, I'm done. Like I finished it, I'm done. But then I'm not going to send this to the client yet. Let me just hold on and come back to it. And I probably maybe go take a nap or eventually sleep or maybe see a movie. Basically, do anything else and come back. In some scenario, I've noticed that when I come back, I'm not able to spot things that make me go like, what was I thinking? Right? Because when you're stressed, when you're fatigued, when you're tired, it's easy to just miss things that you naturally or normally wouldn't have missed. So in order for you to not be in that situation where you would have published a case study that is filled with typos, right? Get someone to read it, or give yourself like 2 or 3 days to just go and come back, leave the case study, come back, leave the case study, come back. And then when you do that, you'll be able to like point out things that you probably have missed before. But generally, we are saying that the fact that you and you alone think that you've completed the work and it is good doesn't mean that you've actually completed the work. Neither does it mean that it is now good. So whatever it is that that you think that you need to do, whether it's reviewing it yourself multiple times or getting someone to do it for you, you should do it. But don't be the only one, and don't just finish it and say, oh, I'm done. Take hello world. Here's my case study for your perusal. It's gonna backfire. Seriously gonna backfire. Okay. Yes, I believe this brings us to the end of it. We've talked about you know, we've talked about what case studies are, we've talked about how the chat should be. You should start with a beginning, have to take people through a very interesting middle, and then come down with a banging conclusion. We've talked about the anatomy of the case study, the overview, the problem statement. Now, this is the anatomy. We're not saying you should necessarily name these sections this. Don't forget what we said about headlines, right? The fact that we say, oh, write an overview doesn't mean you should now title your overview. It's weird. Yeah, so the anatomy of the case study, which is also the outlines that can help you write a proper case study. We have the overview, all right. Excuse me. And when we're talking about overview, we said the overview is a quick summary, of the company or product. Right. Basically, this is where you provide context, initial context, and then we have the problem statement, like why did this project need to happen, right? And then we have the user and audience, like who are the users, right? Or who were the users? This is where we help the reader understand who we're designing for. And the roles and responsibilities is where we talk about, excuse me, what you did, who else worked on it, how big was the team, just talk about everyone. And then talk about scope and constraints, are there like unique or limiting factors I experienced, like the budget disturbed, the timeline disturbed, were there issues with time zone, like what were the issues that were faced? Then you talk about the process, which is a step-by-step account, a step-by-step rundown of what you did and why you did it and the outcome, and then you talk about the outcome, what happened in the end, goals achieved, lessons learned, and everything. So this anatomy is key whenever you're trying to write a case study, because if you can add this and you actually put out points under each and every one of them, like you properly articulate your thoughts under each and every one of these outlines, then you definitely be fine. Then we talked about to write a case studies, giving it the project title, writing an outline, which is what we just, left. This is our, case study outline. And then, talking about filling in the details. When you're writing, don't just tell us what you did, tell us why you did it. Tell us what the result was, tell us what you learned. Right? I'm gonna give an example here. And step 4, write headlines. Headlines are very, very important. I'll give an example of how headlines can make a difference. And then we had a summary here, of the things that you should take note of. Basically, a summary for everything we're talking about so far. And then we talked about case study mistakes. Your summary should not lack information. You should not only share method and tools, you should also share the outcomes, share your findings. You should not only think in steps, you should know that it's okay to reference earlier steps whenever you're writing. The fact that you've gone past step 1 doesn't mean that you should ignore step 1 or forget step 1. Don't write too much. Nobody wants to come to your case study page to read Romeo and Juliet. Like I said, make it concise, make it clear. All right. don't use stock photos in your case studies. Use actual visual representations that you use in the project, because that's what this is supposed to be. Stock photos are no for case studies. Don't forget to close your case study properly. Give us a proper ending. Talk about your outcomes properly. Talk about the conclusion properly. Tell us what you've learned. Tell us what you're going to do differently next time. Help us feel that you're human. Help us feel that you actually went through this range of emotions and you've come back strong. You've come back one project wiser, you know. And then don't be, last but not least, don't be the only one who reads your case study, because the thing is, if it's you, then you'll probably not be able to, spot the errors or mistakes that might arise. And then you'll end up pushing out something that, doesn't work or disturbs people, or people don't even understand. And at the end of the day, all the work you've put in would have been waste. All right. Thank you very much for listening. That brings us to the end of this session. I hope, you've been able to learn one or two things. Or at least you've been able to understand what it means to create a proper UX case study, and hopefully, you're ready to attempt to use now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to Zoom so I can see if anybody has any questions. So at this point, if you have any questions or comments, yeah, be sure to indicate. Let me stop sharing my screen right now. Okay. Yeah, guys, any questions? Are we all good? Okay, I was about to say this either means one or two things. Either the session was very self-explanatory and you don't have any questions, it was confusing and you don't understand a word that I said. I thought someone's hand was up right now. Okay, yeah, Rebecca, you can unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, Dami.
Hi.
Okay, so my question is, if I want to like create a portfolio now, I have to like design my own project from scratch. I can't, okay, for example, if someone has created like a website, I can't use that website and I want to like create a portfolio, like a mobile app design. I want to like do a mobile app. And the person that did the website thing does not have like a mobile app yet. Is it possible for me to like build my portfolio on that, like converting the website to like a mobile app? Is it possible? That's the question I want to. Does that question make sense? I don't know if it makes sense.
Converting a website to mobile app, I'm not. Are you saying building a mobile app for, maybe
Yes.
I'm assuming that the website does it or provides a service and they do not have a mobile app and you're thinking of building a
Yeah.
mobile app for it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So it's you write based on what you do or what you did. So if, for instance, I decided to redesign maybe Bolt or Amazon, for instance, right? If I decide to redesign Amazon and I work on that mobile app, changing the structure, trying to reimagine the UX principles, the UX approaches and everything. Once I'm done, I can write a case study based on that. I'm not writing case studies based on the actual Amazon app. Do you understand? Because I did not do that. I'm writing a case study based on this replica that I made. Do you understand? So it's as long as, even if you're replicating, no, let me know it's replicating. Even if you're redesigning the currently existing project, right? As long as you did the work, I redesigned this, I changed this is mine. Do you understand? You can write a case study on that.
Okay.
Your case
Okay,
studies
thank
come
you
from
so
the
much.
actual projects that you worked on.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Cool, you're welcome. Who else? Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, Rebecca, you might want to mute yourself now so that
Oh, sorry.
it's fine. Yeah, Olajumoke, you can ask a question.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dami. So my
Hi,
question
good
is
afternoon.
concerning this case study thing.
Yep.
Is it just this particular, what is it called? What did you call it? The wireframe or the structure that you gave us, that's the only approach to case studies? Or is there any other way around it? Because I saw one. What brought my question is this: I saw one, though I don't know how applicable or how acceptable it is in the real world scenario. The case study was just talking about the products they designed, and what the product is doing. You understand? So I don't know, probably the person is not looking at it as a case study, but the way it was posted, it was like a case study. But majorly what it was saying is about the product, what the product is targeting to do, basically. So that's why I'm asking the question, like, is there any other way around the case study thing, or you have to just be like this? Because most times it's always very long with this that framework is always long. It's always very long. So what will you have to say
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So there is one aspect of, let's even start from here, right? So when you're writing your case studies, or when you're trying to put your case study together, you don't start in Figma. I hope you know that. You don't start in Figma. You probably like have a Google Doc or something, right? Where you have the headings and then jot out your points underneath, right? The only time the case study, like you bring it to Figma to start designing things, is when you're done. So what happens is that designers write case studies, right? They write proper case studies, and the case studies are lengthy, obviously, because there's a lot of things to talk about, even after they've stripped out the unnecessary information. So what happens is that if they want to post it on some platform, right, because they see how long these things are, and I don't know if you've seen something like this before. So they might, maybe on Behance, for instance, they might have, case study for ABC XYZ, right? And then they just take some part of the actual, long form case studies, and they put it there. And at the bottom, you see something like, click here to read the full case study. I don't know if you see something like that before, but they do it. See, when you're writing case studies, you need to follow the rules. Like, these are the rules. The same way you cannot have good designs without following the design principles. Like, if I give all of you a task now, I mean, we've been seeing that, like, you'll be given a task and everybody will come up with different approaches, different ways to handle the task, but the principles are the same. Do you understand? The principles are always the same. It's just that the approaches are different. So if you're going to write a case study, like, you're going to have to follow the same principle. Now, you might now decide that after you've done that, you're going to take some parts out of that case study, right, and post it somewhere as a short version, right? But if you're writing a case study, you always have to think about it as, writing everything. The case study is an account, like a story. Yeah, it's like a story. And this is for everybody also. So after you've written your case study, you can decide to, now go back and shrink things down, so that you can have something you can put in your website portfolio or your Behance or maybe Dribble or wherever, right? Some people actually even put their, you guys should know of Medium, right? That article where you can share, that platform where you can share articles, right? Some people put their case studies on Behance, on Medium, right? Where it's like, it feels like a blog post because that's the best way they know that they can represent that, and that's fine. I actually said I was going to share an example. Thank God I didn't forget. Thank you for bringing that up, Olaji. Okay, so let me just share my screen really quickly and show you guys this, and hopefully it helps. Okay, wait, what did I do? Okay, let's put this here, and then give me a second, please. I'm looking for. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is a portfolio site of someone named Simon Pan. And the funny thing is that I came across this site years ago, like a long time ago. But the crazy part of it is that till today, right, everything still makes sense. Like, its structure still makes sense. So you guys can also, let me see if I can put this link in the chat. Maybe in your free time, go through. Okay, I probably can. I can't put it in chat now because I'm sharing my screen, but I'll do that later. Yeah, but let's do this first portfolio and see what he has first. This first case study and see what he has first. Now, so at first glance, let's just scroll through and see if we follow the principle we've been talking about, right? Number one, you would notice that is headlines, right? Even though he's talking about challenge here, it's challenge as a heading. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Right. And then for every single part, you can always see that there's a very bold heading to separate the information flow. Right. And of course, short, unique headings for each and every section. Then he's using, quotes to call out whatever it is that I want people to focus on. And you would see that every single one of the images that we're also seeing are from the actual design. These are not stock images. Do you understand? This is a picture that I took with his camera. Like, this is him. Do you get, like, he took these pictures deliberately because he wanted to work on this. This is his board where he was working. Right. So that's exactly what we're saying. Like, the structure stays the same. Now, this particular person can decide that, oh, because I've worked on this, I want to take just this part of my case study and put it on Twitter. I don't know. And just say, oh, I worked on this, I worked on that. And then maybe in the thread, add some screenshots of the app. Right. So when people see that, that is not his case study. No. Do you understand? He's just talking about his, the project that he has done. Somewhere, somehow, he's going to tell you that, oh, if you want to read the full case study, click here. And then that link is going to bring you here where you're going to read his account of the entire thing. But always keep that at the back of your mind that case studies are accounts. That's why they are long, because you're telling a story. Stories have different layers. This is information architecture that he created, right? And yeah, spectrum situations. He outlined every single thing. I don't think I've seen other case studies that are descriptive as this. I've seen ones that look finer, obviously, but I've not seen ones as descriptive as this. And he did this years ago, right? I think close to when I started. So that's what we're saying. Like, the structure remains the same. But anyone you're saying that does not have, like, that are omitting parts of the anatomy, then just know that that is not a complete case study. Do you understand? Like, now, I'm not saying this is very, very long. I'm not saying all case studies have to be as long as this. That's not the point. Okay, and look at this conclusion. Do you understand? In conclusion, they launched the project, and then this is the impact the project made. Like, he followed he followed everything to the letter, and that's what we're saying. Now, back to what I was saying. I'm not saying that everything needs to be this long. That's not the point. But the point is that the structure needs to be obeyed. Do you understand? Don't use stock photos. Take actual pictures of everything. Break everything down into, sections with their own headings, so that it's easier to scan through. Now, if I'm going through this, now I know that, okay, this part is, introducing the project. But if I don't want to read that and I keep going and I get here and I know that, oh yeah, this is the part where I talked about this insight. If I don't want to stay and I keep going and I keep scrolling and I don't want to stay here and I keep going, I can probably just decide to, oh, okay, this is where you reframe the problem. Do you understand? But yes, when you're talking case studies, back to your logic, okay, when you're talking case studies are long. They need to contain the full account of your work. Full, not half, full. So anyone that you're seeing out there that is just, just a short snippet of something, that is not a case study. That is just you're probably just introducing the word to your design, or describing your design to your audience, right? That is not going to fly with recruiters that are looking for things like this. I know the funny thing is that this guy has 1, 2, 3, 4, and they follow the same principle. But that's not the funny thing. The funny thing is that since I think that was it 2020, I think it was 2019, or I don't know. I think it was 2019 that I came across this. Since then till now, right? It has not had to update anything here. Like, it was this 4 projects I saw back then. These are the 4 projects there now. But the crazy thing is that if any recruiter visits this guy's site today and they see these 4, even though they were from how many years ago, they are going to want to recruit him. Why? Because his accounts were perfect. These accounts can stand the test of time. And I'm pretty sure that's why it's not bothering to update anything anymore. Because, I mean, what's the point? Like, why add new ones when my old ones can, do all the work for me? So I'm just going to copy this and share with everyone in the chat, so that you can go through. Hold on a second. Where is the chat? Okay, yeah, found it. Okay, yeah, so that's basically it, right? It needs to contain everything. Do you understand, Logic? Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any guidelines or character limits for writing each section of any case study? I would say no. So when I was given an instance about Twitter's 140 characters, it was to help you understand that, just think of a structure that can help you streamline things, break it down. Probably 140 characters might not work for you. You might want to increase or decrease. That's fine. But whatever it is that you're sticking with, whatever number of characters or something you're sticking with, ensure that you've stripped it down to, you stripped it down to the best size, really. Let's just call it that. I'm not going to tell you, each section must be 200 words. No, there's nothing like that. It's subject to you. Just keep that at the back of your mind that if the story is too long. Now, for the site that I shared, for instance, right, I'm 101% sure that it's not everybody that has visited that site that has read through every single aspect of that case study. Even I have not. I've gone through it. I've skimmed through. I'm like, oh, this is nice. This works. I went through like the 4 case studies he has there, but I did not sit through reading every single one because, of course, it's long. Right. So this case study would definitely get in jobs recruiters and stuff like that because people can skim through and see what he's talking about. Right. But what he did differently is that he utilized numberings and bullet points properly. And then he really spaced out. He spaced out his sections, like ensured that everything was not looking too jam-packed, and he used real life images. Right. So anybody going through that would feel like, oh, this is real. Like he did this, he went out here, like he took this picture, I can see the camera quality, right? He did all this, and there's no stock image or something. And at the end, he gave us like a conclusion in the outcome and everything. So yeah, Simon Pan is an excellent UX case study writer that we should emulate. Yeah. So my shares, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing the name very well. I don't have a number for you. Like, feel free to work with, what works for you. But try as much as possible to break it down to remove everything that is not important so that even if it's going to be long, it's not going to be excessively long. And yes, case studies don't have to be written in Figma, like I said. Your case studies can come off as blog posts. They can look like blog posts. I've seen a lot of case studies. Even if you go to medium.com, for instance, and you search for UX case studies, you see a lot of them, right? So if you're worried that, maybe you're not very strong in Figma to be bringing in text and creating a complete PDF or something like that, don't worry about that. You can always write it in Google Doc and upload it as an article so that anybody that wants to read it, maybe on Behance, you copy some part of the case study that you've written and, add it as the caption on your Behance or your websites or Dribble, wherever. And I add a link that will take them to the article to read the entire thing. That works too. In fact, that's perfect. You don't have to stretch yourself too much. But yeah, that's that about that. Who's feeling confident about writing their own case study now? Show of hands. Wow, nobody's feeling confident. Okay, you guys should not be scared though. Like it's not crazy. As long as you worked on it, it's easy. Yeah, it's just for you to sit down and try to remember everything that you went through. Oh, if Williams and Samuel worked on it, right? I mean, if Williams worked on it with Samuel, it's just for him to sit down and be like, oh, okay, who else worked on this project with me? Samuel did. Okay, what are the things that we encountered? We encountered this, that. Okay, what are the what was the scope? What are the constraints? Who are the target audience for this project? You're laughing. Who are the target audience for this project? What did we do? What did we learn? That's it. Like that's literally it. In fact, when you're starting, don't think of the length of your case studies. Don't think of that. Just think of the structure. Like think of the anatomy and write things under that. The more you write, the better you get. Like the more projects you do, the more you'll be able to articulate your thoughts and your words. And then you just see yourself writing longer case studies and you're asking yourself, how? Why? It's because you now have a larger bank of knowledge and then you now know how to articulate your experience better. So for the assignment that you're going to be getting this week, what we're looking for is not, who can write the longest case study? No, because trust me, even we don't have time to sit through like 10 pages case study per person. No, it's how much you follow the structure and how much you give us clarity on what you are saying that you've worked on. Do you get? So don't let the length scare you at all. Don't. And then for the imagery, it's not a big deal either. It's just for you to take pictures of it. I mean, you did your wireframes, did you not? You did your surveys, did you not? So for that part of survey, if you for Simon, for instance, Simon went out to talk to people and then he took pictures with them, while they are checking out what he's showing them. For you, since you didn't talk to anybody, it could be taking screenshots of the results of the surveys that you sent out. I mean, taking screenshot is easy, right? And for those things that you sketched down on paper or something like that, snap those, right? For wireframes you made in Figma, export them as an image. Do you understand? Like, it's not deep. What matters is understanding the structure of an excellent case studies and trying to emulate that and letting that be your guideline for writing. Outside that, everything else is fine. So don't be scared. Don't be scared. Yeah, I guess that brings us to the end of this call. Guys, unless somebody else has any other questions to ask me, because I'm not seeing any. All right. I want to believe that it's because we all understand what I've been talking about. I don't want to believe I'm a bad. I'm bad at teaching this. All right. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Do enjoy the rest of your the rest of your day, the rest of your week. For the class that we're going to be having on Friday, it's not going to be like a lecture again per se. We literally covered the important things. I'm not going to confuse you by trying to bring in, more materials. So what we're just going to do on Friday, it's probably going to be short. It's just to discuss, I mean, at this point, you should have been thinking around how to write your own, trying to attend the assignment and everything. So it's just be a discussion, like what are you experiencing? If you have any questions, please let us know, blah, blah, blah. That's what we're going to be doing on Friday. So if you can make yourself available for that, I think that will be beneficial for everyone. And prepare your questions so that, All right. Thank you very much, guys. It's been awesome talking to you as usual. Take care of yourself. Bye.